Welcome to the NonProfit Voice Tech Series, a special edition of the NonProfit Voice podcast, hosted by Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners and editorial advisory board member of NonProfit Pro. In each episode of this monthly installment, Mark will have conversations with prominent nonprofit organizations and industry thought leaders to learn more about different technology offerings in the marketplace. Join us, and together we will learn more about these innovative digital tools and how to navigate the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Mark Becker here, founding partner of Cathexis Partners. Today, joined by a couple fellow Central Florida natives, Abby and Maria. Abby, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and your role?
Yeah, sure. My name is Abby Jarvis. I am part of the team over at Neon One. So what we do is we have a suite of tools that help nonprofits kind of find and engage and then retain their donors. And one of the coolest tools I think we have is a CRM. So we can get a lot of insight into donor data and how nonprofits can use that data to really kind of build a community of supporters. So super excited about this topic, really excited to be here, and can't wait to get started.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And we've had you on a podcast before, and always great to chat with you. And Maria, mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Maria Shanley. I'm the Director of Marketing and Data Management at Second Harvest Food Bank in Central Florida. I live in Orlando, Florida, home of Mickey Mouse. And I oversee our direct marketing, which includes direct mail, digital fundraising, as well as marketing for the organization. And I oversee our data team, which includes data processing and also data analysis. So love this topic.
Yeah, it's so today we're going to be talking all about data, right? Cathexis Partners, my company, recently put out a report that we hope to be able to link to from this description of this podcast. But Abby, Neon's also recently put out a donor report, right?
Yeah, we have. It is called Donors: Understanding the Future of Individual Giving. And it looks at it's a pretty comprehensive look at what donors are doing in different verticals and how they are giving, how they want to communicate with nonprofits, and what nonprofits can do to kind of keep them engaged, especially after that first gift, because that's where so many people drop off. So right. It's a really cool report.
Yeah, definitely a lot of great information in there. Definitely check it out. So let's start out by talking about kind of data reporting and analysis. You know, what should folks be tracking and how are they tracking it? And I would love to hear from Maria, from you first, kind of, you know, I know you guys are in the weeds of this often and on a regular basis, but tell us what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, we hired our first data management position, which is very exciting for us. And so what we've done, we were able to hire someone who knew data analysis, and he has some Tableau training. And so what he's done is he takes our data from both databases that we use and puts them into Tableau to create dashboards. So what we do as a team, our development team looks at this data on a monthly basis when the month closes, and we're looking at things like, we're looking at our monthly goals for direct marketing and where we fall for those. We're looking at average gift sizes. We're looking at company gifts versus individual gifts. We're looking at monthly data, monthly gifts and one-time gifts. And then we're also looking at monthly gifts and how many of those monthly donors have given additional gifts and during which time of the year. So we look at the data on a monthly basis. We're looking at the data on a quarterly basis. And now we're about to do our end of year review, because with food banks for the past 2 years, with COVID, we've kind of boomed in giving. And so this data is so important to us because we need to look at those 3-4 years back, right? Because we're still trying to get back to our new normal of giving. And so it's important for us to really keep an eye on these COVID donors and what they're doing, and try to project for budgeting for the next 2 or 3 years to see where we need to be.
Yeah, the pandemic has really turned everything up on its end, right? definitely.
Those are my favorite meetings, Mark. I love those monthly meetings.
Yeah.
We just sit there and we just talk data for like an hour and look at all these fundraising numbers. And then we're also looking at our social media numbers as well, like the impressions, the engagement, those Facebook fundraisers. We also look at our volunteer numbers to see what the shift is there. So we like to look at those.
You're just geeking out on a monthly basis. I like it.
Yes, love it.
Abby, anything to add about the kind of things that folks should be looking at?
I think it's interesting to not, I mean, of course, tracking your fundraising performance is like the number one thing, right? That's how you pay the bills. But I think if you have the means to do so, getting a feel for the different segments of donors that are represented in your overall base is really significant. Because like Maria called out, you probably have a cohort of donors that are there because of a major event like COVID. So you have a number of different motivations represented in your donor base. And if you can speak to those motivations efficiently, then you can keep them engaged more effectively. Another thing that I know you and I have talked about before, and I'm really passionate about, is understanding the different age groups and the backgrounds of people represented in your donor base. So your millennial donors are going to want to interact with you differently than baby boomer donors. People who are from different backgrounds and have different giving histories are going to want to interact with you differently. So understanding not only your fundraising performance, but then understanding who is driving your fundraising performance, I think is really special, because the more you understand the actual individuals and the segments represented in your donor base, the more effective you'll be when you're actually trying to talk to your donors. And you'll be a lot more, I think, comfortable asking for support in different ways from different groups.
Yeah, that's so true, Abby. We do an age overlay we have an age overlay dashboard that we look at as well to see if that has shifted.
Has it?
Yes, so we're definitely seeing those those older Gen Xers. It's obviously our biggest donors are those baby boomers, but you can see that little bump when you get to Gen X. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah,
that's super. That's very cool. I didn't even know you could do that. Awesome.
So Maria, you guys do, what is it, 3 or 4 different peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns a year?
Yeah, so we do. We have our virtual food drive campaign, and then we also do like a Run Disney. We're part of Run Disney race, and so we try to engage runners and to do fundraising through that tool that we have as well.
And in addition to your monthly and quarterly and annual review of overall giving, as far as for those campaigns, analyzing before, during, and after, and then before the next season, how does that play into all of it?
So we are, so during COVID, we did have our virtual food drive tool just kind of exploded for almost 2 years. And so we are really kind of looking to see which of those donors have started virtual food drives those previous 3 years and trying to really retain some of these almost like new cheerleaders for us, right? That started a virtual food drive during COVID. And so I think we're still trying to figure out what that messaging needs to look like. And we are sending them like impact stories and we're looking at the data, but we're trying to find different ways to kind of let people know about this virtual food drive and how you can help in this way.
Got it. Any thoughts there, Abby, when it comes to kind of campaign life cycles?
I mean, when it comes to campaign life cycles, I mean, I'm always kind of fixated on that concept of the virtuous cycle. So making sure you're reporting that impact like Maria and her team are doing before you're making an additional ask. But I mean, what they're doing is it's perfect. That's really what you want to do, is keep just that virtuous cycle, making sure you're updating people and reporting their impact before you ask them again.
Yeah. And then any examples, Maria, of how you use that data to kind of alter your timing or your messaging, of your messaging, or your segmentation of your audience, or the tone, or even the ask levels that you're putting into your different forms?
Yeah, so I have 2 examples. So definitely for when we look at our monthly donor dashboards, we're looking to see when people are upgrading their gifts on their own. And so that kind of helps us see which times of the year we should definitely be running these upgrade campaigns. And I think like we all know that we should be doing it in the fall, but it's always nice when you see a dashboard and you're like, oh yeah, this is when people really are upgrading this gift, right? And then something else that's really cool is in Google Analytics, since our donation form is tied to Google Analytics, we can see when people are going in there to make gifts. And so something that we saw in our data is that pre-COVID, people were giving gifts throughout the whole day, different times. The past year or so, we are seeing that window has actually shortened and people are actually giving gifts after 9 and before 4 o'clock. So we're kind of taking that data and making sure that when we testing out different email sends and times, right? And different days as well to see, because we're looking at the data from Google Analytics that shows us when these gifts are being made and how do we take advantage of that and send emails around those times.
You are in it and you are on it. I like it. That is great. Yeah, that's interesting. Any thoughts around the messaging and the timing and all that, Abby?
Yeah, I'm actually like, it's a podcast, so you can't see, but I was like grinning when Maria was talking about when they're seeing donors come in that kind of shortening window when people are actually giving, because we noticed a similar pattern in the data that we looked at for our donor report. We started noticing that the vast majority of donors are giving on weekdays, and we noticed in that people tend to give in the early afternoon. So when we looked at all the data, my coworker Tim calls it the golden hour. It's Thursdays at 11:30 because that's when we saw the most processing happening. And I love that Maria called that out because it's a reminder that not every nonprofit is the same. So Maria's donor base behaves differently than the donor base for the SPCA down the street, and they behave differently than the church up the road. But being able to look at your data and understand when your donors are most interested in giving and are already in kind of the headspace that will lead to a gift will help you time appeals in a way that will get them in front of your donors when they are most receptive to that messaging. So when you first started talking about, data dashboards 10 years ago, everybody was really intimidated, like, what are we going to do with all this information? And this is just a testament to how useful it is to understand your donors' patterns and when they are actively engaging with you.
Yeah, totally. So let's kind of move on to maintenance, right? How do you keep the data clean? And circling back to something you touched on, Maria, at your organization, and it's not uncommon. A lot happens in a lot of organizations where there's multiple, sources of data, right? You're using Luminate Online and you're using Boomerang, and then you're using Tableau for reporting out and using dashboards on all that. What do you do to keep it all clean? Policies and procedures and all of that.
Yeah, so right now, if you looked at our data 3 years ago, like we would tell you that we don't trust this data, right? But now that since our data manager has stepped in, he spent that first year really looking at what data we had in there and coming up with a plan to clean up the data and really creating those like standards of like how we enter data into our database. And so now, 2 years later, we all say that we trust this data because we know what's in our database, right? And it also sets us up for future databases that we might go into because now we know where everything is, how everything is coded. He has manuals and procedures. He's amazing to have at the food bank.
Yeah, it sounds like a huge add and so important to have those standard operating procedures and this one source of truth on how things are supposed to be done and what reports to be run, right? Because you can go into any system and see some standard or custom reports that seem like they are pulling the same data, but they have completely different numbers, right? And then it's okay, so what do we trust here? So having that person, that resource to point to the right one, this is what you do for this thing, and this is why these numbers are different, is really important. And I'm sure it's been a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to get your whole development team involved and to really educate the whole team on how this data is being used and how it's being entered, because we've had a lot of meetings with different teams to make sure that we're all on the same page of how we want this data, the data we want to get, right? How we need to make sure it's entered correctly.
Right. And yeah, starting out with what do we want to see, right? And yeah, are we all looking at the same things? What do you think, Abby?
I mean, I work for a for-profit, so not a nonprofit, but we see the same things in the for-profit world, making sure there is a process and that everyone knows the process. Everyone on the whole team knows what to do. So if you have an intern entering donor information, or if you have your development director entering donor information, like making sure everyone's kind of on the same page. And the other thing that I think is important to think through is if you are using a number of different tools, so your donor database, your donation form, everything else, making sure they all talk to each other really well. So you're not getting, data in lots of different formats from each of the different services that you're using. So I know that it is, I can hear some people thinking like, oh yeah, well, it's easier said than done. And I hear you, but the time that you spend making sure all of your services talk to each other well, and the time that you spend making sure everyone's trained on what to do will save you time down the road when you're not trying to parse through 3 years of data that doesn't necessarily feel trustworthy, like Maria and her team had to do.
Yeah, we're talking to a lot of organizations these days that reach out to us because they want some help because of the great resignation, right? People are moving on, moving into new roles, switching things up. So there's more turnover than ever in the nonprofit space, which has always historically had higher turnover rates than for-profit. So having that documentation and a process for training new hires, right, and making sure that they're doing the same thing, the same processes, so that you're just not losing that as soon as someone leaves the organization.
Yeah, write it down. I love a checklist. Give me a checklist. Make sure everything is going in perfectly. Give it checklists. Love it. Make everybody do it.
I love a checklist as well.
Good stuff. All right. I mean, we could talk data all day, right? But just in the means to wrap this up, any kind of final thoughts or anything to leave any final ideas here from Abby? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I know a lot of nonprofits really struggle with what to start measuring first and where their benchmarks should be and how to get started. And so I said it earlier and I'll say it again, like remember that your nonprofit is unique. So it's always helpful to look at industry benchmarks to understand anything from average gift size to time of day that people are donating to communication preferences. But those benchmarks aren't scripture. So if your benchmarks look different when you're starting to measure your data, that's okay. And then I'll also say that picking the data that you measure and using it to inform your fundraising is never a one and done process. It's always evolving. So if you start noticing that your performance looks different or your fundraising is shifting, it's okay to change the data you're measuring, and it's okay to change the way that you measure it because your donor base is always evolving and your data will too.
Well said. Maria, how about yourself?
That's really hard to follow, but
it's good, isn't it?
I
know you can do it.
It's really understanding that it takes time to do something like this, right? Because we hear about all these things that you should be doing and all these dashboards that you should be creating, and I think that you have to start somewhere, right? So you have to do that walk, jog, run mentality, and create that timeline for yourself for like the next couple of years, because it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's something that you need to get buy-in from your boss and really help with your team, right? And for us, really having that data manager has been huge and helping us get there. Like we talked about dashboards for almost a full year. It took us a year to get to the dashboards that we have right now, but it was talking, testing, playing with the data. So just understand that this is something that takes time, and also it helps if you bring someone in to help with this data, because with nonprofits, we don't all have that data manager that knows Tableau, right? I feel like we're incredibly lucky with that. And if you are a food bank, thanks to Feed America, you can get that license for free. So for food bank, but but if you need help with other, for these to look at these numbers, budget to get some help with that. Because it's hard trying to figure it out on your own. It really is.
Definitely is. Well, yeah, great information. And I agree with all that. Definitely want to echo about the benchmarks. Everybody is unique, but there's some great benchmark reports out there, including, Neon's recent report. Check it out. MNRbenchmarks.com, I think it is, does a great report every year. And as Abby said, your numbers are going to be unique and different, but at least that even gives, if you're starting out, it gives you an idea of the kind of things that you should consider tracking. But a lot of good topics here today, gang. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks everybody for listening in. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Nonprofit Voice. You can listen to more episodes of The Nonprofit Voice at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/the-nonprofit-voice. And remember, for your convenience, you can stream any and all episodes of The Nonprofit Voice on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.